we have reached to the final session of our Digital Utility India 2022 event. And to be very candid, as a moderator, I feel this is a very appropriate subject to have a concluding session. Considering we have discussed everything about smart metering, grid modernization, asset, and we somehow missed out of one point which is very important. It is about the integration of the various technologies, or I'll say the collaboration of different systems uh, in the utility, transco and gencos. And I can recall my earlier days with the magnanimous scheme of RAP-DRP. At that time it was a RAP-DRP part A. There was a 17 modules in place which had to be adopted by a utility. And out of those modules, it was a pertinent questions asked, which is the most important modules to have in a utility. So everywhere the questions remain same, and hopefully the answer was same, that GIS is the most important modules if utility has to embark on a digital intervention and a right, I'll say on a right path on the technology adoption. So with the elite list of today's speaker with a huge experience of the sector and the technology one, my first, before starting a question with each of the speaker, I want to have your quick view how you see this integration of the various technologies, primarily with the, starting with the GIS, with the other technologies. How have been the challenges which have not been, I'll say, resolved so far, though mature utilities can claim that they have already taken a seamless integration with the GIS and the other application. But outside view, or I'll say, we all would agree that it has not reached to that 100%. So what is your quick view? What have been those challenges and how we can mitigate those challenges? So I'll start, since you are Arijit, you are sitting next to me, I'll start with you only.
Thank you, Amith. And good afternoon, everyone. I come from Noida Power Company Limited. We are an electricity utility based out of Greater Noida. And our GIS journey had started 2 decades back. In fact, we were the first electricity utility to adopt GE Small World in this country. Devesh is here. He can vouch for that. We had got started at a time when the urban presence in Greater Noida was still only starting to grow. Whereas we had distribution assets spread over an area, which is why we looked at GIS as one of the most important fulcrum of our information systems right from the very beginning. And we did our ERP implementation in year 2000, and immediately we moved on to focus on GIS. After initial implementations, we did find that GIS actually cannot function as a silo. I mean, it's something where the application is probably as important as the data in the GIS. And for that, the GIS system needs to be a living, breathing system where it is closely integrated with all of the processes that contribute to changes in the assets that are being monitored in the GIS system. So this, for this reason, we had decided to integrate our GIS system intimately with various other processes. We had looked at not just information systems, but at processes. Those processes which contribute to changes in the data which is being managed within GIS, and accordingly both asset maintenance and management processes, as well as virtually every kind of customer service process, starting with new connection and then load augmentation, shifting of service. All of these processes were intimately integrated with GIS to make sure that the updates come in and the GIS data then can actually play a role in providing the correct information for all of the other applications which are going to derive benefit. Like, for example, if you are talking about a distribution management system or an outage management system or any other application which is actually depending on locational information, all of these can function properly only when GIS integrated very, very intimately with these processes. So it's a challenge, and the most important thing is that processes are also, the boundaries of processes are changing over time, and accordingly all of these interfaces also need to adapt. We need to make sure that they get updated almost as soon as the processes or the assets are undergoing changes at site. So this is a process for which one requires solutions across, over the period of time, and definitely solutions, mobile GIS solutions are going to be extremely vital for us to ensure that we achieve this objective.
Arijit, I cannot agree more on this. Even yesterday, when Lakshman sir was here, and he's such a big name with his experience in the sector, he also mentioned this point about the geotagging of the assets and having a GIS data sync with in the utility to have a seamless data flow across all the ecosystem. But Arjit, one of my question, and allow my banality on asking this question, how you ensure that the staleness of data does not impact your overall system? How you get your GIS data updated in the system? What are the things you are doing?
So essentially we have tried to map all the processes that are causing changes in whatever information we are trying to maintain in GIS. So starting with new connection, or for that matter the network upgrades or augmentation exercises that we are carrying out, creating new substations, creating new networks. Then also during breakdown maintenance also we are required to make changes. So mapping the breakdown maintenance processes also to ensure that the updates flow back to GIS. Then also there are so many other processes also, some customer related as well as some which are not necessarily driven by customers. The key is to actually ensure that we have tracked all of these processes, business processes, whether they are interfacing with customers or not, to track those processes and then make sure that there is an interface with GIS at all the key stages of the process so that the inputs come back to GIS and the data gets updated. So that is mostly how we have tried to track and maintain.
So generally it is said that GIS data is the mother of all data in the utility ecosystem. So thanks Arjit, this is quite insightful to have how to have a updated GIS data. Devesh, now I'll move to you for your quick view on the how utilities what is utilities viewpoint on the GIS and its integration with the other legacy system in place, and what have been the challenges apart from the few mature utilities. I still find the challenges, or I'll say adoption of seamless integration.
Yeah, I fully agree to you, Amith. In fact, this is one of the major challenge which we came across when we work with the utility customers, and we are really thankful to work with prestigious private customers like Noida Power, Tata Power, or Torrent Power, and the way they have leveraged the GIS system as a whole, because they consider GIS as one of the source of truth in their system, and all the data which is related to the assets are being mapped in a very strategic way so that it can be leveraged to its maximum extent. At the very same time, in fact, when we talk about the integration with the third-party application, either it could be the ERP, it could be the ADMS applications, it is really a stage in which the utilities are still lagging behind, okay, except the private players, okay, in which they have really integrated it in a very best way, and they are leveraging it to maximum extent. If we refer to the state discoms, in fact, they are still working in silos, and in fact, they have multiple systems in place in the previous program of RAP-DRP or IPDS and others, but it is not being managed in a proper way. And if we reach to the utility customers, what we find it out that the data are not being updated and it is not up to the mark. And the consumer indexing is one of the major challenge which we are facing when we work with these utility customers. And now in the new program of RDSS, in which we are talking about rolling out of ADMS application for larger towns and others, what we are experiencing when we take the data from those utility customers in order to evaluate whether it is feasible to integrate the ADMS with the GIS application, because the data model for running of the DMS application is coming from the GIS itself. So there is a huge gap in terms of attributes, in terms of connections, connectivities and others, which is going to make the life of the SIs, which are actually going to enter into the RDSS program for the ADMS package, to be more difficult. So in fact, we have requested already several utility customers that they should start cleaning up, they should evaluate how correctly the GIS are in place in their organization, and how those can be utilized in a better way. Thanks.
Thanks, Devesh. Very beautifully architected. Sumit ji, I'll be seeking your opinion, and I'll flag the same question, that how we can effectively handle field dynamics and keep an update of a GIS data, so that stillness of GIS data don't impact, like Devesh said, that it is a single source of truth considered in the utility. So how to ensure the GIS data is remain updated? What's your view?
First, I will agree with Mr. Mitra and Mr. Jha. Our journey has also been similar. So, for last 2 decades, we have been using GIS, and heavily we are actually utilizing in all our aspects, all our processes. So coming to your question, to mitigate the challenge of the dynamism of field, so what we have tried to do as a solution or as a arrangement, that we have tied up all the field jobs with our GIS system. So whenever a line clear permit actually is being taken in the field, we have ensured that unless the data comes back into our system, the notification of the order in the SAP system should not get closed. So there are some interlocks which are in place. Unless part A is satisfied, part B cannot be performed. So this is one part of it. And then definitely today mobile in a big way has come into our domain, and GIS earlier, the way we used to look at it, it was a conventional way of looking at GIS. GIS actually was kind of a privileged application which very few niche users in the organization used to use, and means it was mostly a desktop based application. Now even our blue collar employees who actually are not computer literate, but they carry a smartphone and they do a lot of things, and they are actually updating back the data into GIS. So what essentially we have done, we have tried to map all the work orders or all the field jobs which are getting executed at site through our GIS platform, and when a job is getting executed in field, we are trying to pull back the data immediately from field itself. So there is no middleware or there is no middleman involved in getting the data back into GIS. So that's one part of it. There are challenges because since we are using, due permission of Mr. Jha, we are using ArcGIS and ArcFF. So we are using a competitor's product here. So we have a concept of feeder management. So it's not that just we can get the vanilla data from the field. So there are some challenges getting the data from field and getting the feeder also configured. But then at least we are not losing on the data part. There are some technical challenges which we are taking care of as a IT team, and we are mitigating those risks. But then loss of data is what we have to certain extent mitigated. And today we can't say 100% because that will be a white lie in front of the entire audience, but around 90% of the data we are able to collect from the field.
That sounds great. In fact, I would appreciate your candid opinion on this, and a perfect amalgamation of people, process, and technology that can only help, certainly. So I'll move to our next panelist, Suman ji. I would like you to share us challenges faced by the organization in today's world about this GIS integration. Since you have largely handled all these challenges, you understand all the nuances, so I want your candid opinion on this.
all over the world, most of the utilities, what they do is, well, they have excellent system, right? They implement GIS. And then we realized that, am I audible? So, and then we realized that the integration of the GIS has to be done with a system which is 20 years old, and with another system which talks about AI, ML, drones and whatnot. So this is the coverage that you have to do when you handle a typical GIS integration projects. Okay, and by the time you integrate with your legacy application, you realize that that particular vendor now says that I'm going to upgrade this application. So whatever you have integrated so far has gone, right? You again come back to the same starting point. So that's one of the biggest challenge which we have when we try to integrate GIS in an organization because of their different levels of their maturity. So that is one. The second is data. So we have seen that same data being entered by multiple business groups across different departments, across different systems. Right from your customer address to asset information, and then everybody says my data is perfect, and incidentally nobody's data is perfect in that sense, right? So having that proper data governance, who is going to own what at an attribute level, not at an object level. So I mean transformer may span across several systems, but who is going to own what part of an attribute of the transformer, that is extremely critical. Okay, that makes it perfect, and we also try to eliminate as much as possible the duplicity of information across different systems. That's point number 2. Point number 3 is interoperable systems. So a lot of these systems that we deal with are closed in nature. So the system is closed and the data is also closed. So then you realize with some file transfer, get some file out of that system, do some messaging, apply it in your system. So which makes, it takes a lot of time, and it also makes the process extremely complicated. Fourth point is, moving on to this, a lot of us do AI, ML and whatnot, right? So what we do is we take some 15 years of data, put it on my GIS layer, try to do some analysis. But what we do not do, a lot of people do not do, is to get the third dimension, that is time. Okay?
Agree.
So problem which was the existing 3 years back may not be a problem now. So this space-time cube is something which is extremely critical, not only from a GIS implementation point of view, but also when you integrate GIS with different systems. And lastly, and an extremely important point is data security. So now we have mobile GIS, mobile applications and whatnot, where data physically resides in an user's device, right? So how to make that data secure on that device, and also when it is being transferred to the system. This entire back and forth communication. How to secure all of that. So these are the primary challenges that we have faced across all our implementation.
Absolutely, Sumanji. We all agree on this. In fact, the quality of data, I'll say completeness and the correctness of data is very important. Otherwise, it is garbage in and garbage out kind of a thing would happen. So I'll move to Arijit. Arijit, since we are talking about the data, I want you to take this discussion to the next level, where how GIS can be integrated with the billing system to perform a energy audit for a distribution network, because ultimately it's a business which makes sense, and the moolah coming out to utility where the keen focus is. So how this GIS integration with the billing system would be helpful for the energy audit part specifically?
Yeah, of course, in India, virtually every distribution utility is obsessed with loss and loss prevention, and the ways to identify losses and being able to have a handle on that is something that is uppermost in the minds of all distribution utility professionals. So what we have done, we have obviously the benefit of having an enterprise GIS system which is meant for electricity utilities, is that we are having the network connectivity information. When we are creating data in GIS, we are having the network connectivity information available within the GIS itself. So essentially what is happening is in the energy audit system, we are, energy audit application rather, we are deriving the network connectivity related information from GIS, relating the source with the sink, and then arriving at the, obviously, correlate with the metering results as well as the billing that has been done to the consumers to find out what is the extent of gap. But of course here what is absolutely important and very critical for distribution utilities is again the fourth dimension, which is time, which basically means that even if you are doing an energy audit for a particular period, even over one day, the connectivity does not remain the same. The connectivity keeps changing. And tracking the changes in connectivity and then feeding it back into the GIS, or in the, we are actually taking up the information from the GIS and then maintaining it in our backend system, but having that correct timestamp for all of the changes that are taking place in the network relationships is absolutely critical. Or otherwise what happens is, not only is the connectivity information not correct when we are doing the energy audit, but also if it does not capture all of the changes that have happened during the period of the energy audit, the results are always haywire and they don't help you with the primary purpose of the energy audit, which is to pin down which sections of the network are loss prone. So, so that is the most critical, critical aspect of performing energy audit. But of course, the key role that GIS plays is in providing this changing connectivity information between the various sources of supply and the end consumers who are consuming the electricity. And that is how we are leveraging GIS, correlating it with the billing information as well as the metering information to perform energy audit.
Very, very insightful, Arijit ji. Even I'll move to Devesh ji. Devesh ji, to be very candid, there has been a two-part in utility, or I'll say one group is saying that there is a problem with the GIS application. We generally heard this, whether it is like sir mentioned about ArcGIS, ArcFMS thing. At that time, there was a common complaint coming out that that is too heavy to load in the system. It is not a user-friendly kind of thing. So how you think as an application, GIS application, the market has evolved to cater the need and the requirement of not only utility, just also keeping a future in mind, how the application, GIS applications are robust currently now?
So, as rightly mentioned by sir, in fact, initially, if we go back in the initial phase of GIS deployment, it is mostly considered as a application which is running on the desktop machines. But gradually now we are finding out that customers are more focused that, okay, how we can enable the remote users in terms of either extending the accessibility in form of web, in form of mobile, so that more data can be captured. In fact, the data could be made in a round trip way so that any change which is being performed at the field level can be captured over the mobile applications, and it can be given to the central team for making the, for analyzing the data, whether it is the correct data, whether the quality related informations are correct or not, and accordingly the things will be implemented in the system. At the very same time, in fact, what we are finding out that now there is the introduction of new elements in terms of renewable. We are talking about how the surveys which are being carried out by the drones and others can be further leveraged in order to make the things more viable, in order to capture more data in a more efficient way, so that we can use our workforce in a better way. Okay. So in fact, what we are finding out that in terms of capturing the data, in terms of getting the data more integrated, rather than keeping a GIS a closed application, it is now having multiple interfaces. It can interact with different applications, either on in terms of APIs, in terms of web services and others, so that the informations which are residing in GIS, as well as it can exchange data with the third-party application in a much more efficient and a better way.
Sumit, I like to you to add on what Devesh ji has just mentioned. So, are you find as a from a utilities perspective, Are you fine that the points which Devesh ji has mentioned for towards the completeness of the GIS application at utilities disposal? Or you want to add something with respect to your requirement or probably the future's requirement coming up?
First of all, users needs to understand that GIS data is not only for the analytics purpose, it is for the day-to-day operation purpose also. So if the processes are relooked at and they are redesigned, then they will definitely find a value in it. And suppose, I'll give a small example, they start planning their entire next year budget out of GIS. So if the GIS data is not correct, the entire calculation, and finally they have to actually arrive at a money term. But then if your length of the cables, the number of faults, all these things are not throwing a correct picture, you will actually end up in a wrong budgeting exercise. So they need to be actually sensitized why they need to prepare data. And if they are not preparing the data in correct form, then what repercussion they will be facing. And what he told is right. There are lot many ways right now available. There is lot of APIification which has happened. Security is one big thing because we are carrying on the mobile devices the entire data. But then there are ways to safeguard the data also. And if everything is done in the right way, then we should be able to leverage the data in right form. So the ROI or the use cases needs to be designed in such a manner that GIS, because GIS is not a very cheap software, we need to spend a lot of money to actually keep the software running every year. So the AMC amount is quite high. So if there is no return on investment on the money we are investing, then it's a loss for the organization, it's loss for the consumers also, because ultimately they are bearing that cost. So if we are trying to utilize the GIS system, then we need to think of all the processes, because the earlier conventional erstwhile processes were all SAP or ERP driven. But then those systems, actually every part of those system has some GIS or locational intelligence required to make them work in an efficient manner. So we have relooked on all the processes, and many places we have done lot of integrations, and now most right from the connecting the meters, planning the jobs, in fact returning the meters back to our stores, everything is actually tracked and mapped inside the GIS system. And it's actually a people independent process. We can actually, because AI is one part, but then AI without the locational intelligence, I think won't actually be a strong solution. If Olas of the world and Dunzos of the world, they can actually just use the Google Maps and do some routing based application and they can deliver results, then why not utilities? That's the point actually we strive to actually
Exactly.
educate our users.
Sumit ji, that is the point. And in fact, I can notice a smile on Arijit ji's face on this. Before Devesh counter you on your point, this debate is going to be very, very interesting. Arijit ji, you want to add or you want to in support of what Sumit ji has mentioned, or you want to accord with Devesh ji's view that the product has to be much more ready or utility has to be much more ready to adopt the GIS solution application?
So it works both ways. We have to respond to the demands of the time and the demands of the business, and accordingly the application, GIS application also needs to evolve rapidly to meet those challenges. It is very difficult for utility businesses also to stand still and survive. It is not possible any longer. Things are changing too fast, and even I'm sure every utility in the country, be it private or public, are facing the headwinds of change to different degrees. So as we need to respond quickly, obviously the application infrastructure that we are having with us, GIS playing a very, very important role in that. That also needs to respond to these demands of change, or else what happens is ultimately people will always start looking for solutions, so we can't afford to run out of those solutions. So that in that way I'll certainly agree.
Devesh, now you are on a court You need to rationalize your point from the industry side on the solution part. And I can see a smile on our, the panelists sitting at the last.
No, but in fact, very well said. Considering we are from the OEM side, and in fact, GIS is one of the critical applications which are being adopted by the utility customers in order to leverage the best benefits of it. And in fact, on the very same way, we keep the things in that what are the changes which are actually driving the market, okay, and how we can serve our customers in a better way, so that any new challenges in terms of addition of new characters like renewable energies, storage, EVs, how those new elements can be well addressed, okay, so that once the utility start adopting these new characters in their network, how efficiently it can be managed within the GIS application, due to which in fact we have adopted the agile deployment process, and in fact we are releasing a kind of quarter release every quarter, so that the new shifts which are being added as a market force should be addressed well on time, rather than going for a release over annual or biannual year. We are adopted a quarterly release of the product, and the good thing is that it is very seamless in nature, so that if you adopt for the COTS deployment, you don't have to put much amount of effort for migration from one version to the another version.
That's quite insightful, Deveshji. In fact, Deveshji, what the takeaway I can take up after these three last discussions with the panelists, that from the GIS application, GIS data and integration perspective, it is, I'll say that we are yet to reach on a mature state, but I can also understand there is a challenge. There is a challenge because this is a regular updation is required. There is a change in the process is required. The kind of a mindset is required. So from an industry side, from the utility side, we all need to collaborate and have a hand-in-hand kind of approach to ensure a successful GIS integration or seamless integration with the other legacy system. So Sumanji, I'll reach out to you to have your view on how this GIS application integration with the other application will set up a good future for the utility, considering the energy accounting thing, considering the improvement in the operation part, billing part. So how you think that GIS will play an important role in this?
Too many systems to integrate with. So yeah, so we have tackled the problem in slightly in a different way. So when we talk about integration, it can also be a use case where these other applications, say for example, I talk about asset management, and for example, SAP or a Maximo becomes my asset management software. Now, what I try to do is, instead of seeing anything and everything in GIS, why don't I enable my asset management software to a reasonable extent of spatially aware, right? So the basic viewing of assets within an asset management software, or I mean basic capabilities like zooming, panning, maybe a simple search and all that. So I can do all that in each of these systems. It's only because it's a web-based solution today. So they will consume web services, and then they should be able to display them in a graphical form in the map, and should also be able to execute simple queries. Now what that does, it reduces a lot of these user load on the parent GIS system, and those users may not be technically GIS savvy users, right? An asset management group is seeing it. So it reduces a lot on my GIS application, and it also optimizes my license usage, and also makes my applications faster. So that is this side of the story. Now coming to the other side of the story, now every business group, what we do is, when we talk about GIS application, we load an application with 50 menus, 500 layers, assuming everybody will do everything. But in reality, that's not what happens. So if I see what I need to see, then that 500 of them, I can mostly have 30 operational layers wherein I'll go and do some editing, and rest all can be cached. They're still available, but they're cached, which makes the system a lot faster, right? And I can also build targeted apps for my specific business groups. So an analyst or a planner need not see all data of all customers, all operational data of all assets, right? So those kind of things we have done. We have developed targeted apps, made all the apps spatially aware, like every single app you see on your mobile is spatially aware today. So why don't we try that in utilities? So that kind of reduced a lot on a lot of this load on GIS and made it a lot more efficient. Still a long way to go, but we have started something.
Arijit ji and Sumit ji, even the ball is again in your court. In fact, I like to present this question now in a different way. Let's see if we just mentioned about this Ola and Uber thing. So if as a Ola co-founder, Ola founder or Uber founder, they can think of a GIS in a much more effective way and ensure this operationalization of this in a very seamless way. Why utility cannot adopt the same kind of approach? Sorry, I'll be a bit crude on this, but I want your candid opinion.
So,
we cannot compare with Ola and Uber with
no. So there is no reason as such. Only thing is that as utilities, we have also adopted products which are specific to utilities. Like in case of Adani Electrical, they have electricity. They have adopted ARC GIS and ARC FM. ARC FM is a product which is specific to specifically meant for utilities. Similarly, we have also adopted a product which is specifically meant for utilities. And that is also because of the specific needs of utilities. Now, once you have adopted a product, you will also have to, definitely there are rooms for innovation, but the product also needs to evolve to meet the requirements and certain requirements can only be kind of overcome, or I would say you can rise above them to a certain extent. Probably when you start out with a clean slate and you choose a platform or a technology that is purely targeted for your needs and you have architected also towards that design, then definitely there are some choices that are also available with you and then you can grow faster. I would say that for consumption of GIS at the end user level, I mean, there have been tremendous capabilities which we have not always been able to provide to our end users because our starting point is not always the same. So that probably is one of the reasons that I can think of.
In fact, I echo your view. In fact, in a wide discussion, there was a one point came up that probably that would be a right analogy here. What I see from an independent view, that there is a gap of a kind of a perfect capacity building in the change management while adopting this GIS application and making integration. Someone yesterday mentioned that Sachin Tendulkar with a MRF bat alone cannot make a century unless Sachin Tendulkar get properly trained and do a practice. So likewise, I believe that yes, we have a product in hand, we have a right intention in the processes at the utility end for disposal. The important part is also to ensure the right kind of a capacity building in the change management while adopting the GIS applications to ensure the right utilization of application and a seamless integration of the data. So with this, we'll conclude our session. Just a last concluding remark from each of the panelists, starting from Sumanji.
So as you started, right, GIS as a platform has tremendous potential. Absolutely. And it can go to, you can basically do anything and everything, and adding spatial dimension on any analysis gives a lot of value. So that's one key thing. And the other key thing which is coming up nowadays, along with mobile GIS, There's a lot of cloud adoption which is going on. So that's also going to be there, but a word of caution, cloud adoption doesn't mean to dump all your infrastructure and everything on cloud. You have to use it uh, uh, as a service. So unless we use that, the problem will still remain the same.
That's a very important point, sir, you made.
Yeah, I have 2 points to make. First, from the data perspective, don't let your geography becoming history. So that's
Very rightly said, sir, very rightly.
moral of the story. So let it be geography only. Okay. And second, you always need to think of the top line and bottom line and think how your GIS application will actually impact those parameters. So if you start to relate how this particular app or this particular application which I am building will directly impact my top line or bottom line, you will definitely try to get value out of your GIS.
In fact, I agree to the point, and in fact, very well said that in order to have a better utilization of the GIS application, skill development is one of the critical part which utility has to take care about, especially the state utilities and others. Okay, because even though now GIS has come up with a different amount of lighter version. Okay, means whether you can have mobile, web, and other users at the very same time. But at the very critical part is that how to utilize those applications in a efficient manner. Okay, in fact, we are talking about how we can enhance the customer satisfaction level to a greater extent, and in which GIS can play a vital role, because you can have different set of data, okay, in form of maps and formats, which can help you to leverage various kind of thematic mapping in order to have better billing, in order to have better customer satisfaction, how I can serve to our new customers who are actually trying to adopt the renewables and others. So in fact, there are dynamics which are being added up, okay, and both in terms of OEM as well as from the utility point of view, both have to work hand to hand in order to keep the satisfaction of the customer to its best extent. Thank you.
Thanks, Devesh. Arijit, your concluding remark, please.
As I was saying earlier also, we are at a time, we are right now facing a situation where every user of information system has a need, a pronounced need for personalized and enriched information. What was probably available kind of out of the box in the times past are obviously no longer good enough. Today, for the utility professionals to respond to the situations and to react in a far more efficient manner to deliver value to the organization, the need for enriched and personalized information is extremely critical, so that the right decisions can be taken. And obviously GIS can play a very, very important role in providing that enriched information, and I'm sure as the process, needs of the processes keep evolving, we will find new ways of making GIS more and more relevant for our businesses.
Thanks, Arijit. And in fact, I must say this has been a very insightful and interesting discussion so far. And a big round of applause for our panelists. That was a wonderful discussion. And with this, we conclude our session and hand over this to our wonderful host, Urvashi.